All right, so let's look at the nested scenario when you have the parent-child relationship. And we've seen this, but I just take a step and do this kind of very slowly in just this one example. So I still have the app running from the prior video. If you saw that, here I have a shopping list set up, but that's all I have. I do not have a recipe. I do not have an ingredient in this app, and that's what I want to build here. I want to build a recipe ingredient, and I want to think of those as two different data structures, and I want to have the nesting so that a recipe has multiple ingredients. So in the URL, I want to be able to say, okay, here is recipes. So here's all my recipes. Here's recipe one, and here's recipe one's ingredients. I want to be able to have that data structure and those URLs. So I still have VS Code open, still in the same project here from the prior video. We just made a new project, and all we did was we added shopping list. So I'm just going to keep this one going, and I'm going to do Flask make model recipe ingredient, and then I want RESTful actions, and I want this nested. Now, without the nest, you're going to end up with a prompt. You'd still end up with the same scenario, but it's going to end up creating two models for us, a recipe model and an ingredient model. The caveat here is that the CRUD only applies to the child model. It does not apply to any of the parent models. So if you wanted RESTful actions and routes on recipe, you won't get this by just doing this one command. You would have to first do Flask make model with recipe. So just remove this ingredient. You would need to do this first. And you don't need to nest because there's nothing there. If you ran that first and then ran ingredient, then you would end up with what we talked about. So I'm just going to run the full thing just so you can see, because that's what's in the docs. Okay, so it created two models just as I promised. They're there ready for you to add columns to and make relationships. There's recipe, and then there's ingredient, and then we just saw already that they are both registered. It creates a nesting effect in the routes. So first, if you go to the init of your app, you'll have recipe blueprint registered, or recipes blueprint registered. And then, so here is route recipes. So here's the init for that. And in there, you'll have a recipes ingredients blueprint registered. And so that gives you the init here, and then here are the routes. And as promised, it treats recipe like it's its own data structure. The one caveat, as I mentioned earlier, is that there are no routes for recipes. So in order to get all 7 RESTful actions, you would have to first do the recipes, make model recipes minus CRUD. Make model recipe, minus CRUD. So let's just check and see, hey, did we get what we wanted? And sure enough, we do. Here's the index page, here's the show page, and then if I go back and try to look at the show page for recipe, I'm going to end up with 404 error. So, and this is what the docs say. This does build out that nice nested scenario for you, and it's equivalent to what you saw in the docs earlier under make controller. And so here's what we saw, and we saw this URL shape of recipes, the ID, and then ingredients, and then if it needs it, an ID on the ingredient. But this was just that warning saying, hey, if you really want recipe to also have the RESTful actions on it, then you need to build that first with the CRUD, and then follow that with the recipe ingredient with the CRUD. One question you might wonder was, well, why do we even need nesting? Is that necessary? And the answer is you don't necessarily need nesting. You could make recipe and then do CRUD on the recipe and end up with a route like this, and then you could do the exact same thing for ingredients, and your URLs would look like this, and that is completely fine if you don't want to show that relationship in the URLs. But if you want to show that relationship in the URLs, then you need to use the nest in order to get something like this. So, all right. You may, if you've been watching, you may wonder, well, what about namespacing? Am I able to do the namespacing with make model? And I don't want to give it away, but I think this big header gives it away here. So we'll see you in the next video where we'll talk about namespacing.